Hey YouTube, Anime Hound here at the Dragon's Den with...
And Lyndon Howard.
Yeah, him and his empty jar deck. You've heard me curse this thing out in other videos, so I'm going to give a deck profile and show you as to the reason why I hate this thing so freaking much.
I'm going to do like Kid did.
Oh, and Ben has no friends. Go ahead.
Well, you first need that morphin jar there. Without it, this would just be a deck. 3 giant rats to search out that morphing jar, or each other for defense. Save your life points a little. Sanguine, because then you can bring morphing jar to your hand. I prefer him over morphing, or giant rat, because then you can play in defense. Mystic Tom-Toms, because then he can bring out Sanguine, and also defend some life points. There are 2 traps in here. Rock Bombardment. Bring Morphing Jar to the grave, inflict 500 damage. Yeah, that's important.
And that's right, there's only 6 monsters in this thing.
Lovely. Now for the spells, the 34 or so spells. We'll start with the books. Book of Taiyu, the key. Lets you flip up Morphing Jar in 1 turn. Now, ain't that lovely?
I have so many of them.
Book of Moon. Flip him back down, or defense if you want. Now, my favorite, Book of Eclipse, because what this does, flips all the monsters face down on the field. At the end of the turn, all your opponent's monsters get flipped back up, whether or not they were flipped by Eclipse. Then your opponent draws 1 for each one that was flipped up by its effect, milling them more. And if you use it on their turn, Morphing Jar can get just normal flip summoned, saving you a card. Now, for recovery of these books, because you only have 9, Spell Reproduction, that allows you to discard 2 spells to bring 1 back. Sometimes you may have to discard a book just to get back another. Magic Stone, that doesn't have to be spells. Any card, so that's better, but you can only have 2. 2 Shallow Graves for recovery. Now the thing is, these have the condition your opponent has to have a monster in the grave. So there's ways to have that happen. Monster Reincarnation, the cost of discarding a card is not a big deal in the empty jar. Foolish Burials get him to the grave, so you can use the previously mentioned cards. That goes for getting through the grave. Magical Mallets, if you get the crappiest hand in the world, you can always rely on a Magical Mallet. Hand Destructions, I love these because both you and your opponent discard 2 cards, then you draw 2. If they discard a monster and you have the strategy in your hand previously mentioned, then you can pull off a Shallow Grave. Feather of the Phoenix, discard 1 card, bring 1 to the top of your deck. Helpful, but it's a bit long. 3 Cup of Ace, the loveliest card in the world. You get to flip a coin. If it's heads, you draw 2, bringing you closer to the cards you need. If it's tails, your opponent draws 2, milling them further. Giant Trunade. Just fun. Get rid of any potential threats to Morphing Jar. Then the finisher, Card Destruction and Serial Spell. Serial Spell makes you discard all cards in your hand to use it, and it will double the effect of Card Destruction. So what happens is, they discard all cards, they draw all cards, or equals Card Destruction, discard those, draw more. But that leaves you with an empty hand, so make sure you have a Taiyu down. Now for the strategies of this giant pile. To get out the jar, let's see, getting out the jar, best way for that to happen, through a giant rat, through your monsters, giant rat, Sanguine, and tomato. And then you want an Eclipse down at all times, just make sure, because then you can flip down Morphing Jar. And then Shallow Grave, Foolish, Rock Bombardment, and Reincarnation. Those are all your graveyard ways. Now for the flipping, which we all enjoy. Okay, let me find it. Here's the jar, your best friend in the world. Okay, you want him to go face down on your opponent's turn with Book of Eclipse, because then your opponent will draw cards, and then you can just flip Flip summon him if you don't have anything, or use Taiyu, flip him up, or playing Taiyu down would be better, and then you want a Book of Moon or a Book of Eclipse in your hand to chain it, flip him back down right away. And then Magic Stones and Spell Repros, those will allow you to get the books back. And make sure, just here's a mistake that I've made far too much. Make sure that you have hopefully have a Taiyu down and Morphing Jar in defense position before you pull this off, because that will leave you with no cards in your hand. So make sure you can either just kill them, finish them off with that, or have an Eclipse down at least, so that they'll get close. You can defend yourself a turn. Now, Feather of the Phoenix, that's just if they destroy Morphing Jar for some way or another and you don't have any other options. Hand Destruction gets you close to Morphing Jar, and that's about all in this deck. And now for the side deck, which we all love. Trap Eaters, get rid of Skill Drain or Oppression or anything like that. Needleworm, if all else fails, you want Needleworm. He can mill, but you won't get anything in return, which is terrible. Now, the main threat that the Morphing Jar deck fears is removed from play. If Morphing Jar is removed from play by DD Crow, Caius, etc., you're boned. So, this side deck has 3 DDR, 3 Imperial Iron Wall. Make sure those come out as soon as possible if your opponent's removing from play. And then 3 Loyal Decrees, again for skill drains and such, Macrocosmos, and that's the end of that story. So,
Alright.
See ya, YouTube.
So this is it. That's the Empty Jar deck. This thing is brutal. If you want to have some fun,
Josh hates it.
For you guys on YVD, give it a try. It's a lot of fun if you like agitating your opponent. So again, this was Ben.
Has no friends.
Yeah, I already did that. This is Anime Hound at Dragon's Den. Out.